Hi guys, my name is Everett Smith from Triple Mint Real Estate, and I'm here to talk to you about Good Cause Evictions and why, if you are a renter, a landlord, and even a buyer or a seller, this new law that isn't quite a law yet matters for you. Prices for new rentals are skyrocketing anywhere from 10 to 20%, and people who are being displaced out of their current homes are having a really troubling time finding new apartments and new homes to actually move into. And now that the eviction process has finally ended, it's giving people unrest about the whole situation. So what exactly is this Good Cause Eviction Bill, and why is it important to know about it now before it's a law? It's something right now that state officials are discussing back and forth to decide whether or not to actually implement this as a law. Now, there are a ton of reasons on each side why people might be fighting either for or against this bill. But I want to talk to you about the facts and some of the things that are happening because of this bill, and how you can actually get involved to state your claim or make an impact into the making of this bill. Because the way I see it, they are going to pass this to become law at some point. It's just a matter of what sort of feedback they're getting from both sides to make sure that it is as helpful as it can be for everyone involved, rather than hurting a lot of the people that it potentially could. This has been passed already in states like California and New Jersey, and 9 times out of 10, if it's right over the bridge, it's probably going to be something that we have to think about to some capacity. Now, what kind of buildings does this apply to in New York City? A unit which has more than 3 families and the owner is not currently living in that building. If it's less than 2 families, then this law applies to you. Anyone who has an investment property, condo units, co-op units, this applies to you. Anyone that's going to purchase a property that may have tenants in it, this applies to you. Multifamily buildings, 3, 4, 5 families, 6 and more, that's considered commercial anyway, so chances are there's some rent regulation there. This basically encompasses a lot of people with rental property or who rent rental property in New York City. So if this bill were to become a law, what exactly does it regulate? First of all, the payments year over year that the tenants are paying to the landlord. So typically, a lease or an agreement from one year to the next has some kind of increase. It could be a certain amount, or maybe it could be a certain percentage year over year. And that general increase accounts for any additional property taxes that the owner might have to spend, or any other expenses. And if not, it is just generally profit that the owner is now making on their unit. So what this bill does instead is regulate the amount of percentage that can increase year over year to 3% or 1.5% times the annual percent of change of the consumer price index. It's still unclear as it's specifically written. They're trying to account for things like inflation that could increase at an amount that is not calculated for year over year. So an example from my understanding is that if the inflation rate was essentially raised at a difference of 3%, well then this would be 1.5 times 3, increasing the rent up to 4.5% over a given course or period. Again, this is just the way I am interpreting it. It's really not clear, especially if you go to the spot where this is written on the Department of State's website. The summary and the actual law in its long form are different from each other in the way they read. I think it's up to interpretation until they do make it become law. But again, that's why I'm making this video, because I want to make sure that you understand that these things need to be hashed out and really decided on a more involved level with the community before they are actually put into place, because otherwise they really could cause some challenges for either side when it comes to finding a place or making a profit out of being a landlord in New York City. And since 66% of people are renting in New York City, this affects a lot of owners as well. too. Let's get back to the point. If your taxes or common charges are increasing or you have an assessment, what if my tax abatement is ending soon and I need to raise the rent a little bit more for my tenant to help me pay for the space? Obviously, I'm not living there. I want my expenses to be covered as much as possible. You can no longer do that under this bill. Now, the other thing that this bill does is it outlines the only reasons that you can have a tenant removed from the space. First of all, if they're operating a business illegally in the space, you can definitely kick them out. If they are a nuisance for you or any of the other tenants in the building, if they are defaulting on the lease in any other way, or if they are behind on rent. The only other reason beyond that is if you're actually taking over the space for you or a family member. Again, I can understand on both sides of the coin why this is needed. Yes, there are tons of people who are living in their spaces and maybe being displaced when they're going to look for new spaces because the amount that they were previously paying is definitely not the amount that they're able to pay. And that can be a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you are still working at the same job or you have a modest income. Those are some things to consider on the tenant end. On the opposite end of the perspective, you are definitely regulating rent to a point where it is somewhat destructive. You want to do some renovations to the space. Maybe it is pretty old. Maybe you're thinking about adding a few new features so that you could actually collect a little bit more in rent of the space. If I have to sell the space now with my tenant in it, how is that going to affect my sale? Well, now you can't ask a tenant to leave in order to do that. This makes it a little bit more of a risk and a liability to continue to rent out the space, things that have not been fleshed out yet, and that's why I believe it is not yet a law. Again, I wanted to make this video because I think it is super important that you yourself have a voice in what happens here, and the best thing that you can do is find out who represents you in your state, in your zip code, and figure out what they're saying, what their voice is, what their opinion is on the situation at hand. I know in my zip code in Crown Heights, they are already speaking about this and seeing how they can be implementing it into New York City, and they're advocating for it. In this video, in the link below, I'm going to include the links for you to reach out to whoever your city council member is so that you can give them your opinion and really talk to them about what you think is important in a bill like this. Again, if you're going to berate them or tell them why you think this is a terrible idea, I definitely don't recommend that. The narrative is what's most important. And if people are showing concern and feelings for the other side and why they don't think that this should be implemented and how this directly impacts them, that is one thing that can be expressed now in this period before it's a law, before it becomes everyone's problem or everyone's conversation. Now is the time to talk about it, and now is the time to do something about it. So there will be a link for you at the bottom in this video where you can get involved and speak to your council member about the situation at hand. This is how city issues should be decided amongst the people, rather than the people that we just pay our government dollars to do and do whatever the hell they want anyways. So that's all I got for this video. If you had any questions or if you wanted to reach out to me to find out more information about things that might affect you or your sale, I would encourage you to reach out to me at 646-653-4764, and I will give you a detailed analysis on things that may be affecting you or your purchase or your home sale in the near future. And that's all I have for today. So thank you for watching Easy NYC Real Estate, where I make New York City real estate easy for you. I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.